So, hi, Nick, philosopher.
Hello. Good to see you.
It's great to see you again, too. I love, even though it's been way too long, I do love checking in with you because um, I so appreciate you. I so appreciate, too, that a younger person, I'm actually visible in your world.
I still remember what you said about like how I was like a bridge, and I still tell people that because that really hit me because I never thought about it that way. And you get a kick out of this. There has to be something about like the universe because someone else recently said the same thing, and I was like, oh, they're like, oh yeah, you're like a bridge. You're like a translator
Yes.
for different cognitive realities, and you don't discriminate. You just discern. And
Yes.
I was like, that was insane to me because I'm just being myself, and I was like, oh my god, that reminds me of what you said.
Yes, yes, I saw that in you right away. It's like I celebrate that so much that the judgment isn't there, the conditioning. So what that tells me is you are, for some reason, and that could be something that could be explored more deeply. You have maintained both the intellectual intelligence and the emotional intelligence.
Yes,
And while I did speak briefly to your mom at one point, I I see that might have been a big part of it because you were given permission to be that in your
absolutely.
environment. Yeah.
Yeah.
So kudos to your mom.
Thanks. Yeah, she
Yeah.
definitely she definitely gave me like absolute freedom. Like it was, and I always, and it was interesting, like because we sort of had like this symbiosis when I was really young that I still kind of remember, where she realized that I was the type of kid that if I wasn't given absolute freedom to like think, that I would be decimated. And then I looked at her and I was like, oh, she's a very interesting character where she's spontaneous and creative, and she wants to travel and have fun and explore the world. And 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 so it was like we were like, click. Ah, yes, this, I sense this from him, I sense this from her. Okay, now we're going to help each other. And it was like, and she always says like, yeah, it was like at 2 or 3 years old, she was like, it was like talking to an adult because she didn't think anything of it. She just wasn't going to say, I'm not going to talk to my kid like goo goo gaga.
Right.
So she just talked to me normally, like how she would talk to one of her friends. And then she was shocked to realize that I understood and continued the conversation. And then she was like, oh, this is great.
Yeah, yeah. That's just fabulous. I'm just thrilled to be in the stream of the benefits of this on this side. Um,
I feel
so
the
I
same about you with
oh
keeping up with your blog and everything. Like, it was so strange. Like, I don't know if it's a coincidence or if it was something deeper than that, but I was getting into this space in my head where I realized that categorization doesn't work. That that thought is always enfolded with itself, but it's also divorced from itself. It's a gas, but it's also a solid. And and it was like, oh man, there's just so many universes in just one particular context of one singular thought that just occurs in the millisecond. And then I was looking into when you say like you get these uploads, um, and where you feel like there's this um, overwhelming light, and you're just in it. And I thought, yes, why don't philosophers, why don't thinkers, why don't people who explore the experiential notice this huge issue with discernment, where it's like, hey, well, if things are just meant to be discerned logically in these crude categories, then explain these experiences that prove that all the categories are infinitely extended and malleable and fluid, and no one can explain it. And that's the exact area I was in. And then it seems like when I was reading your blog, I was like, oh my God, that's in some sense what she's experiencing as well.
Yes. Yes. Beautifully said. This is my conundrum. This is my constant conundrum. It's why I'm invisible to consensus reality. It's why, because I've been developing my own language over the years, because I know since a child I've been watching how different words and phrases grab the attention of even the most brilliant people. It's like the mind, it's like they're just inside the library of all that they have ever known, right?
Yes.
So they go and they go, I know what that is, and they go grab it from the shelf and go, and then it's like this, it's, I don't know, it's kind of cheating to me from my view, because you just take these blocks or these what would be a good analogy for that, where like in code,
Like these placeholders or these tokens that
yeah,
these representations already have.
yeah, so you pull them off the shelf and you go, I know what this is, and then you start putting it together in sometimes kind of slightly new and different ways. So it's like, oh, this person is very clever, because they see it slightly differently but still with the same existing pieces, right?
Exactly.
And
Yes.
so the experiential is a direct enlightening, if you will, it's absolutely direct to that light and that sound, as I've used those terms before, to where you're changed by it. You perceive differently. You see so much more. You see beyond the blocks and the limited equations that people are operating within. And then it's like, I feel like I'm knocking on this glass, like, hi, somehow I ended up on this side of the glass, and I'd really like to talk with you all about what this feels like and looks like and what my understandings are. But on the other side, I just note, oh, I sound like a crazy lady. Oh, they see me as a new ager, or they see me, it's like, and that's that, I know what that is. That's a crazy new age lady.
Yep.
Dismiss, right?
Yeah.
So this is where I am. I'm like, I'm doing this on the other side of the glass. Hey, everybody, this is where we're headed if we could just get beyond language and your thinking mind.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So yeah, that's where
I,
I'm
I,
at.
I think I know what that is. So there's representations which everyone has as sort of like a zero level approximation of thought that's sort of quick and continuous and maintains fidelity with between the membrane of the mind as its own personal monologue and this external membrane that has to extend in order to survive and have some intersubjectivity. That's like representation, right?
Yeah.
And then the more sophisticated individuals, what I think they do is when you say, when you talk about your experiences, the really smart ones, they'll have an idea, they'll have two really good ideas. The first idea is not only what you're saying is not representational, but it's also a completely different realm of semantic understanding that defies the very representational apparatus that gave birth to the idea of semantics in the first place. You
Yes.
have to go a level even deeper. Good, representation got you to understanding, but now that very understanding has to unravel itself in order to be fully concrete, you know?
Yes. Yes, perfect. Yeah, and I also note too that on the other side of this wall, and I've done this before. It's like, okay, wait, what language will they understand? Okay, what do I have to appear like to
Yes.
to be visible in their reality? And so that's what I've done for many years, and I've just noticed, Nick, I've just noticed this. Oh my God, I don't think I can do that anymore. I don't, it's not here anymore. And then it's like inside, I heard, felt. That's because it's reversing now.
Oh,
People need to want to learn this language. The reaching through the glass has to happen in the other direction now. If that's what you want. It's like, it's, this isn't like you must do this. It's look what's available if you could just hear this. And here's the operative word, feel this.
yes.
Because you know it's about feeling. This is where the data comes from. This is where you're informed. This is where the instantaneous understanding occurs. Even
Yes.
if you don't, even if you're not trained, even if you didn't go to school and get a degree, and even if you haven't even studied anything that exists.
Right.
What I found in my life is I'll say something and then someone will go, that sounds like the philosopher blah blah blah, or that sounds like this, or and I, oh really, oh cool. So I've learned, about the different philosophers, and I've learned a lot through you in our conversations. But I'm reversed. I'm like, think of me as like an alien that landed here, and I'm clueless as to how you all know what you know, because
Right.
I've had a
We don't.
very different life.
Yeah. But see, we
Opposites.
don't. Yeah, we don't. We live in a backwards configuration where you're seen as the outcast,
Yes.
but in fact, it's just billions of outcasts sort of gathering together to create this thing called civilization. And so
Yes.
the real people who start with, because I think feeling is every person's first language, you
Yes.
know?
Uh-huh.
And but when you just inherit like the outcast civilization, and then it's like, oh well, I guess I have to continue to go down this infinite ladder of languages in order to be considered relevant as an organism.
Yes.
And then you forget the authenticity of what your
Yes.
organismic essence actually is doing.
Yes, exactly, precisely. And I remember it. I don't know if you do. I remember those moments when, oh wait, what? Oh wait, I'm getting smaller. It's like, you want me to
Yeah.
what? And then it's like, yes, in order to continue to eat, and it's like, okay, money is introduced. It's like, you need to be responsible, and it's like, responsible to what? Responsive to the universe, or responsive to this construct,
Right.
responsive to the matrix. So and then we're all taught that that's the real world. That's
Right.
that's the flip, right? It's like we
Yes.
believe that this is the real world. It is not the real world.
It was actually very scary what you just said. Like, I felt terrified for a moment when you said, oh, you feel like you're getting smaller, because I remember that exact feeling as well, where it's like, and I wonder if you've had this moment too. This was a crazy moment for me. I think I was like 4 or 5, and there was this moment where I was just thinking through feeling. There was no separation. Like, feeling was thought, but a higher version of thought, where thought didn't have to be like instance based, like temporal. It was just pure pure feeling, and then it gave me data, like how you said. And so that, in some sense, sure, you could crudely call it thought. But then there was this moment where it was just a pure stream, and then all of a sudden something emerged from that stream, and then it was two streams. It was it wasn't like feeling became thinking. It was more like feeling gave birth to thought, and then I realized that thought was not the same water as the stream of feeling, and then that was the moment where I began to think.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
whoa. And it was
Yeah.
insane because like
Yeah.
I still tried to think through thinking and thought through feeling itself, but then feeling was telling me that feeling is infinite, and that uh, 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 feeling can be infinitely divided into categories that are real but not true. So feeling can be separated into thought, right? And thought is a real category. Thought is a real thing, but thought is not just thought. Thought is infinite as well. So it's like feeling has to create a category in order for there to be a new stream of novelty, but then that novelty begins to think that it's a category, but it's not, if that makes sense.
Here's my experience, which is the only thing I can speak from.
Mhm.
Um, and that is, let me change the view back. And that is what I've learned in my life, what I've learned through this, what I have framed to reach people, because it came in this form in some of my experiences. So for a long stage of my life, I was, wow, I'm being contacted by ETs. This, or is it angels, or is it both, or what is it? Um, but I did have experiences where this is, they appeared this way that others have seen. So there was that sort of relating with other people and their experiences. But what I learned, starting in 2005, when it just became presence, and it would just fill me and inform me and show me things in my third eye. I mean, this is where a lot of the data comes from. And some would say, well, that's the pineal gland. Yeah, probably is, but I don't know, because I don't study it from outside. I'm having
Right.
the experience of it. So what I learned was, and this became my work. What I learned was it merges with me. I'm feeling it and receiving the data. And then before I started speaking it as it was happening, I would have to come out of it and go, oh dear God, I hope I remember this. And I would start to translate it. So the moment you have the thought, I got to tell somebody about this, I need to share this because this feels like part of my purpose is to translate this. So thought is for translation to this realm. We don't need to translate it if we're all on board and remembering the rest of our consciousness and engaging with it and with it. So what would that look like in dialogue and conversation? It would be the same way the presence is dialoguing with me, a communion state. And so we
Right.
would all just commune with each other, and we wouldn't have to break things down into just these tiny little pieces, these, to study and see through the lens of mechanics,
Yes.
versus connected to all that is, connected to the field, remembering who we are and speaking from that place if we need to. But do we need to in that state?
Right.
Because it's just communion. It's all energy. And you know, I part of my my sense of urgency has been hurry. we're running out of time for people to wake up to this and remember this, because as long as we stay separate from ourselves, separate from the rest of this, from our soul, or from, the feminine or the mother. I talk about it a lot in terms of that, because this is what I've learned is this is the divine mother that has been suppressed for so long within our conscious, just complete. That's part of the conditioning. When she's, call it Kundalini or whatever, when she's released and she has a voice again, and she informs us again, then we're able to come back together again in our wholeness. The way we were originally designed is what this presence has communicated with me. Then we own this. Therefore, we cannot be owned by anyone else.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Because we know.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
There's no argument about it. There's no warring over it. There's none of that. So this is how we rise up out of this 3D perspective, because that's all it is perspective.
Oh man, I have so many thoughts. Oh,
good, go.
The consequence of intersubjectivity that we have yet to acknowledge. Like, I think, for example, here's how I have it from my experience, and it's really hard because it's so vast, So feeling, capital F, to be philosophical about it, but feeling, capital F, is ineffable. It can't be erred. And it's just its own vast world onto itself. And when I had my first thought, it was like what I would call, because I know there's many different versions of it, but that's what I call the divine masculine. And it wasn't like a thought where, oh, myself.
Yeah, sorry, you froze. Okay, so go ahead, sorry.
No, it's fine. So thought to me, when I felt thought, it felt like it was its own substance that could somehow so the difference between capital T thought and capital F feeling in that first experience was thought was about something and feeling was, period. Feeling is, but thought was aboutness. It was sort of like all of a sudden being acquired a beingness onto itself, and then started to play, started to fool around. And I never even thought about like telling that to another person, because to me that's not what thought is for. But then thinking arose. Now thinking is a gesture, is a trickster. When you begin to think, then this is where I think the kind of pressure or force occurs, influenced by the external, where it's like, oh, now I'm thinking about myself. Do others think? What's going on? And this is why I think this happens, is because thinking disperses the dimensions of your mind in like a top-down way. Thinking's up here, and now my thinking is looking at my thoughts, and now my thoughts are looking at feeling, and now feeling is looking at thought. And then once you have that organization,
yes,
it immediately just becomes this like sense of, oh, well, I'm organized now, I'm a structure. Let's talk to other structures that seem to have this pattern.
That's
And
so
that's
good.
where things fuck up, because that's not necessarily what's going on. It's
Yeah,
just that thinking can create configurations. It doesn't mean that that is the sole configuration, or that configurations exist outside of thinking.
absolutely. I love it. I love it. This is how we start to loop in what exists, in what we've agreed upon is the real world, like this environment of, so we lost our originality, right? Because
Yeah,
we're coming from pure essence with this inspiration and this knowing, the feeling knowing. And then we, it's like I speak for myself again, it's like the inspiration and the data comes, and then it's like, there is no way that I can just transfer this to this level of thinking.
yeah,
It does not translate. And this is what I'm feeling more and more, is that I'm not able to do this anymore. Not that I was, I just tweeted this actually, not that I was ever really good at it, but
right,
I'm finding that I'm just not able to, put in the energy's not here, which tells me that this phase is over for me, that I can't keep, you know okay, I'll try it this way, I'll try it this way, what if I tried it this way,
right,
so that's gone. And now it's like, okay, we're turning this ship around and we're moving into expansion now. Who's on board? Right? That's
right.
what it feels like to me. It's like, who are the ones who feel this and who can listen to these kinds of conversations and go, yes, 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 like we are,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
not be able to know how to translate it or talk about it. It's fine. You don't have to know how to translate it and talk about it. Just at this stage, own it. Be it,
Right.
even though you don't know what this looks like as we move ahead, because we're expanding now at a very rapid rate. If
Yes.
you can feel that expansion, then you're moving with it. If we're oriented to what we've always known before, we miss the ride into expansion that is
Yes.
happening right now. It is happening, but we can't explain it anymore to the ones who are addicted to the patterns, the repetitive patterns. And I get my value from a job, I get my value from, being involved in my political party, I get my, it's like, no, that shit is gone.
Yeah.
It's like there's this other force that's definitely trying to keep you engaged. We need you to be engaged with this, so come on into the big show. It's like the big circus.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, whoa, and
I love the circus.
I know, I want to be a part of the circus.
Yeah.
um we definitely have that choice to stay with the circus, or we can, start to realize how huge this opportunity is at this time, to just go exponential in consciousness
Yes.
instead of going small again. I see this
Yeah.
as a threshold between cycles, like the Mayan 13,000 year and 26,000 year, the precession of the equinox cycles. We're in between that right now, and it's like, if you don't grab this ship that's moving into expansion, then by default you kind of just go back into the contraction. And then what I have seen, and I haven't really expanded upon a lot, because we had we have to get closer to where it's not so weird that it's dismissed. Um, but the trajectory for that is transhuman. technologies.
Oh,
Yeah,
I love
nothing
that.
wrong
Yes.
with
Yeah.
technology.
Yes.
Here's the key, though. Soul has to be present in order to work in a conscious way with technologies, with our
Yes.
bodies and our senses, because that's amazing. I have been shown that in dreams. I got to feel what it feels like to work with this kind of what do you call it? Do you call it sentient technologies, or it,
like conscious, like,
conscious technologies that
yeah.
work in synergy or symbiosis with our
Yes.
consciousness, because
Yeah.
we're whole, right? But
Yeah.
if you take fragmented consciousness into transhumanism, this is what I was shown many years ago, and I didn't even know how to explain it at that point. Now I know better how to explain it. That if you take fragmented consciousness, and soul must be eliminated to do this. So that's really what the war is over. Is do the question for humanity is: do you want your soul? Do you value your soul? Do you even know how important that is?
We don't. Yeah.
Yeah, and if we don't, then we lose it in this next cycle. Um, and that's not a pretty picture. Um, you don't want that. You don't
Yeah.
want to lose your soul, because then you're not human anymore. You're turning into something else. So it is important at this time, I feel, that people really learn to value their original design, the power of it.
Yes.
People don't even realize how amazing we were designed originally. So it's important to become an original again, and not just try and conform all the time to um, to what you were explaining earlier. It's like reduced, 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 and then, okay, this is where we all live and agree. It helps the lowest common denominator that you accept and remember who you are. That lifts them. It lifts the rest of humanity up if you go there.
I was gonna say earlier, like, because you're making me flood with thought.
Go.
Like the thinking, thinking is not about uh, it's not about politics. It's not about assembly. It's not about um trying to. It's very weird to me. Thinking is very obvious. Thinking is about thinking is about meta sense. So somehow feeling um feeling to me is excess. So um you have a beyond infinite amount of feeling that is indiscernible, and then thought comes out of that ocean, and then thought goes, ooh, now I'm thought. Now I have a new eye to see through. And so it's kind of like feeling produced its own organ to look back on itself and to create new forms of itself.
Yeah.
Take that and we turn it into, and it's weird because you can't directly say, oh, don't do that, because at early stages you don't know, right? But
Right.
like the first impulse is like, ooh, I have an eye. Now I can see. Now let's just give the eyes like legs and feet, and let's build civilization and do all this.
Yeah.
It's like, no,
No.
an eye is not something that's self-evident. It's not like, oh, well, duh, an eye, you know the anatomy, bro. And it's you don't know the anatomy. You don't know where it sprung from. You don't know why in that millisecond of a moment feeling transmuted itself into a new form that doesn't limit the previous form but also doesn't limit the new form. That is very complex and very urgent. You can't just appraise it.
Right.
It becomes another form of density that's added into your field
Yep.
of of intensity.
Hmm.
in that sense. So yeah, like, yeah.
Yeah, very much so. And I would just say, as you were saying that, I was like, yeah, that's what the absolute is. That's what the field is. That's what source is. That's what original source is, not the symbol of original source, which we are supposed to call God,
Right.
right?
I always hated
So
that
I know it
symbolization.
never felt right. It's like, but wait, your God is not my God, and
Yeah.
this is where all the warring happens again on this level. It's like, no, it's my God that is the ruler of all. No, it's my God. And it's because those are versions of God that were created from thinking instead of the direct access, feeling,
Right.
information, data that we were designed to receive.
Yeah.
And so everything's a conundrum at this stage. When you come to this, what I call when you come to the last wall of paradox, and it's like, oh, how does this work? Well, ultimately, we have to expand into the rest of ourselves in order for us to flip, in order for us to transcend the paradox.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a choice at the edge of this reality. You might get to this wall of paradox, and the choice, you could also choose, yeah, that's just too weird. I don't understand what those people are talking about. They seem so woo woo and new age. They say
Oh,
I need to be serious. I need to be intelligent. So they'll go back and
right.
agree to the paradox instead of breaking through because they fear. Here's my other part. They fear.
Oh, I'm here.
They fear this divine light at the core of their being. They fear being consumed by it, perhaps.
Yes.
Um, and because they decide ultimately that they're invested too much in what they were born into and conditioned within. It's like, no, I need to be sensible. Well, that's just a cover for fear. I need
Yeah,
to
so
be
it wasn't me to
sensible.
be sensible, like
Yeah,
really. Like
right.
what access point are you narrowing down your perception in order to come to a conclusion like, oh, this is what it means to be sensible, this is what it means to be intelligible,
Exactly.
like oh, and I think you enjoy this little story. I felt kind of what you're feeling, although I can't compare, but where like I felt like I felt the source, but then immediately, like there's a lot of these sages that I really that I really resonate with, that they speak non-linguistically through language, and it's beautiful. But then I'm like, no, 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 yes, 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 the source, yes, beyond civilization and such. But then Heraclitus, one of the philosophers before Socrates, he hit a node for me. And the node was, it's not just the source. Thought itself is the repetition of the source within the infinite reflection of itself.
Mm.
Like, the source is not just the absolute. The absolute is absolutely everything other than the absolute as well. That's what makes it absolute. It's so absolute that it is in excess of itself. The absolute can't keep up with its own absoluteness. And I thought that was so profound, because that's what I thought was. Oh my God, that's what thought is trying to convey to this entity, that it, even something absolute, even God, has to contend with his own existence as himself.
Hmm.
And you can't do that, because everything is constantly moving. So we like to think of God as this one place, this one supreme reality, and then, the supreme reality is some kind of activity. No. What if everything is such a process that there's no point where your finger can touch it?
Yeah.
Your finger will touch an infinite amount of things and never reach it, not because there's nothing to reach, but because reaching is it. Like the act of reaching and not getting to it is what the absolute is. The absolute is absolute because you can't reach it. It's not like there's an absolute out there and it's absolute because you can't reach it in the sense that it's so beyond everything. No, the beyond is beyond itself. That's why it's beyond.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with
Yeah.
you. What I was feeling, whether it relates to what you were saying or not, what I was feeling when you were speaking was, this is why I was encouraged to initiate the dialogue with it, because it is a constant relationship.
Yes.
It's a constant conversation. It's like it wants us to reflect back to it and begin and have this conversation.
Yeah.
On an equal level, not a sacred, expansive, huge thing. It's like, and I don't know how I would even describe what I am in dialogue with. But I know that it's love. And I know that it's an extraordinary light that has brought me to my knees weeping many times, because it's so magnificent and it's so huge. And it would just kind of commune to me, this isn't other. This is you.
Yes.
This is who you are. And so the more that you are able to claim it and accept it, then you start to discover, oh, I'm just being my natural state. I don't have to worship anything to please send me data, master. It's, oh God, I am the master and I am the data, and
Yes.
and I accept it, right? So acceptance is a huge part of this. Is can we get to that space where all the conditioning that has worked so well, I mean, you got to give these guys credit, don't you? I mean,
Yep.
it works.
That's what paranoia will do. Like, it's like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. I better make this system, man.
Yeah. So it's a matter of what I have always loved the dialogue. And whether it's with the presence, learning how to dialogue with that divine presence, the source, I don't know even what to call it. It's
Yep.
energy. And then I love this, the dialogue with each other now. It's like, what have you learned? What have you remembered? Let's talk. Let's bring it out. This is the emergence of the new world, the new reality that so many of the indigenous ancient cultures pointed to. And I've had the exposure to the Mayan wisdom more than any of it. So it's like you have to reframe everything. In fact, blow up all the frames. Your frames are what are holding you back from understanding this. So yes, we are ascending. If we choose, we're ascending to see through a higher dimensional lens, thereby creating the world that matches that vibration.
The exact issue that words, everything has to be perceived in some sense as semi-conclusive.
Yeah.
Not only in order for it to be realizable, but it also, in order for it to be integrated at all,
Yeah.
and so we immediately get subsumed into this necessity of, well, if I can perceive it, therefore it's real in some sense, therefore I can stick to it. It's like it's so hard
Yeah.
to get out of that. And even like, I prefer Eastern religion over Western religion lately, because Western religion is usually usurped by some kind of statist church structure. But whenever like Christianity and Islam and Judaism was like nomadic, it was beautiful, and there was a lot of similarities with Eastern religion. But and so all of them have in common this sense where they get to the top of this pyramid, and then they're not stupid. They're not trying to symbolize the absolute or the source, but they're trying to create a riddle where, when you unravel the riddle, you don't get an answer, you get a universe. You get that realization allows you to enter the space, as opposed to being like, oh, I confirmed it now. It's more like it's teleportation. They're trying to help you teleport to where they
Yeah.
are, and then now no language is necessary, and then you realize it's endless.
Yes.
But there's still an issue. There's still an issue with this, because I feel like I feel like they don't realize one thing. The one thing that they don't realize is even that's conclusive. You have to, I think there's a rare, like, some philosophers have slightly gotten to the edge that they're almost there, but they die before they like go mad, actually.
Yeah.
Like Bataille, Nick Land, all these, like, they're called philosophers of horror or philosophers of tragedy, where they talk about there's a certain point where you see the brilliance of the light, and not only does it burn you, like people think, oh, you see the light and you realize something, or you see the light and you die because you can't understand it. They say, no. You see the light, and the fact that the light was seen changes the light itself. Because if a light can be seen, now it can be seen through a different color, that color being your eye, your light, your essence. It's not that, ooh, this absolute light created a smaller light in order for it to understand itself. No. There was light. It was never an entity. You can never discern it. And then somehow out of that light came more light that had somehow nothing to do with the light previous. And people are constantly struggling to be like, oh, well, there's God and then there's creation, or there's this and then there's that. And I think what they don't realize is, no, there's just the absolute, and the absolute is the pure open. It's purely open. You can't approach the absolute. You can't fully be in the absolute. It's always, it's like infinite becoming. And you can't tell when something becomes something and when something actually is something, because then that would be a limitation. And the absolute is not limited. And so it's very hard for people to, I guess, think the unthinkable. And so they constantly are like, oh, well, at least we know the absolute is a place that you can actually contend with if you get your teleportation right. No. Once you teleport, don't forget that you can continue to teleport. You can continue to contend with the absolute in completely new ways that you may have thought, oh, okay, well, at least the absolute is this. It's something like this. Well, that's conclusive, isn't it?
Yeah. It. It's like it. Yeah. Okay. Another big buzzword is embodiment. And this is another thing that I know directly versus then having to turn and go, okay, wait, how are other people describing this? What do I have to adapt to? Do I want to adapt to this narrative? Or just the way that, just the definitions that people all agree on, right? In this realm that we were talking about.
Yeah.
So when people are brilliant in with thought and thinking and putting all those pieces together, and not bringing the body into it, and not bringing the, in other words, the mother and the goddess again. I'm going to refer back to that. If it's not, if room isn't made in this beautiful vessel that we have for this light to ground down in, like this currency, this lightning to ground down in to our bodies and our earth, then yes, you will go crazy, because you're not grounded in it. You're not, this is part of what your body is for. I have consistently, in most cases, tried to stop people from calling this a meat sack, or saying degrading things about our form. What I learned through this journey in my life of these transformative events is that this is what we should be valuing and embracing, because it is made of this source. The source made this. And
Yes.
and it is a way that our consciousness can interface with this reality here, this this multi-dimensional reality. We're mostly focused in 3 dimensions or 4, but there's so much more possible if we embody this light, we bring it in, and then we can go, oh, I get it. I can manifest a greater view. And again, back to perception. If I open the pathways here, and this is what I mean by the mother and the divine feminine. When I speak that way, I'm not trying to say, the divine masculine doesn't exist, or that, well, why aren't we talking about the divine masculine? I'm just saying, hello, this is what's been missing. Can we bring it back in to join the divine masculine? The marriage of this, mother, father, and the birth of the Christ,
Yes.
which is what all of that symbolizes. Is this is about us. It's not about some guy, which is part of the manipulation conditioning stuff, is to take your attention and make it a story out here and something to worship, rather than this is about you. This is, these teachers, these great teachers and philosophers, are here to remind us of this. And they try to use language and parable, and to try, they're like this big time, it's like,
Exactly.
okay, all right, let me see if I can translate this to that kind of, I celebrate that ability, because try as I might, I can't even come close to, simply because I lack the vocabulary to reach certain sections of this reduced, dense reality.
Yeah.
So I will always say that I can only go so far, but this is what we're waking up, what is possible to wake up to. And this is what revelations is. It's like, once you embody this, revelation after revelation after revelation, it's like, once it meets matter, spirit meets matter, it ignites, and it's like, I get it. Now it's like onward.
Yes.
And we're not trapped, looping and cycling inside of this, matrix, prison, whatever you want to refer to it as. So I just wanted to introduce that, the sensory view of what embodiment is, that every cell in your body has the potential to come back online with the natural state. Also, when you were talking earlier and you're speaking to the knowing that this is a constant process, it's constantly moving and changing, and to try and capture it, which made me think of photography. It's like going out to take a picture of a river and then bringing it back to people and going, this is what is a river. This is it right here. And whereas meanwhile, the river's still flowing and changing through the seasons, and it looks different. And, it's constantly moving and changing. We're jumping into the stream of these things, not trying to capture it and make it and put it on our wall. It's anything creative is a constant stream. A true artist understands this and has to deal with the pain of framing something. No, I can't say this song is done. It's alive and it keeps changing. It wants to change.
Yes.
And that's why I can't seem to settle on a website approach, because I'm changing so fast now that these little snapshots are like, oh, Jesus, this isn't going to work. I mean, I wake up the next day and go, that's not who I am anymore. I'm this now.
Yep. Yeah.
So how do you take these snapshots of yourself and agree to it? And it's like, this is for the old reality. This image is for you. How long do I want to do that? Do I still have to do it? Do I need a website? I don't know. I'm asking all these questions now because I'm not in that world anymore.
But isn't photography is actually a perfect example. Isn't a website an attempt to photograph the unphotographable? You're sort of, you have to create a photograph of all the snapshots that not only that you've ever had, but that you ever will have. But then that's a double paradox, because all the snapshots are crude reductions of the real, and then a photograph of those snapshots are a crude reduction of the possibility of all snapshots that are possible. So it's really tricky. And to go back to what you were saying about embodiment before I forget, because my neurons, woo,
woo,
is like manifestate. This is so important. Manifestation cannot or should not be reduced to integration or embodiment, and integration cannot be reduced to manifestation. Like, for example, you have a cell. A cell is a manifestation, but it's also an integration of other things that were previously embodied in order to create that cell as a possibility. So you see all those crazy little turns. All you basically get are all of these tiny little motors that are not really motors at all. There are motors of potential that are being clipped into each other as something mechanistic in order to just manifest new things. But you can decouple them depending on what you want to manifest, and you can decouple them depending on what you want to embody or integrate. And that's the source as well.
Yes. Constantly moving, changing, just a sea of potentiality.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that so much. People don't get it, but damn, I forgot the thing I was saying before this, which was.
Don't you hate that?
Yeah, I hate that so much. I was like, because it's just so much, right?
Yeah.
Dang, I'm losing it. There's so much there.
That's my problem lately, is the intersection. It's like whomp. It's like, wait, which thread do I pull on?
Yeah. It's so I think in order to be able to make a website for yourself, in order to be able to make a choice without making a choice, without making a permanent choice, I think that I've been reading about all these like secret societies throughout the years. I've been getting deep into like sages and sagehood, and I realized the one thing that all these people have in common when they stumble upon this secret of the source is that they attempt to create a heralding of that experience. There has to be some kind of gravitation, some kind of gravity where everything can meet. And so they create like these palaces or these hidden places where there's it's not necessarily libraries or a place where you go in and there's set rules. It's just there's this sage, his name is George Gurdjieff, and
Yes.
yeah, you know him? You know?
Oh yeah, we're buddies.
Oh yeah, hell yeah! Like, bro, oh, I've been getting so deep into him. I read his 3 massive works, like Bertelsby's Tales to his grandson, and I read all 3 of them.
Wow.
And it's like, and he was a philosopher too. But the idea is, when he entered these places, he became infinitely malleable, and yet he still left with the passion for more. And he still left still infinitely curious. He was still unwavered by eternity. He was like, okay, that's just one eternity. Let's continue to explore. Let's continue to amass things. And that's what I think possibly you need. You need this. It doesn't even have to be a person, but normally it is for some odd reason. Maybe there's some truth to why that is. But you need this catalyst that you can rely on, where no matter how much activity you find yourself within, the catalyst doesn't break. It constantly sends you feed about what you're giving to it. And that's what that's that kind of notion somehow needs to be encapsulated into maybe a website, a place, a communal spot that you like.
Yes. Yeah. That's very intuitive of you, because this is really the space that I've been kind of hanging out in. Like, I'm an artist, and we're all artists, really. We're just at varying degrees of awareness of our artistry, our capacity to be artists and to create. And so realizing that, I perceive myself as already living in the new paradigm. And this is my reaching back, through the glass wall, is I'm trying to communicate back to the old world, saying, no, you guys, it's like this, and I'm actually experiencing it here, and really, I'd love it if you guys would recognize your own potential to embrace this and move into it. And so that's why I was asking those questions. Do you even need a website in the new paradigm? What does that look like? So those of us who have, let's say, for lack of a better term, already crossed over into and are perceiving and practicing the new paradigm, how, as we were talking earlier, if we're all communing, why would we need a website? It's like, we're so, in the mechanistic materialist world, we're all, taught to be okay with these reduced versions of ourselves and reduced avenues for communicating, and also how we live and govern ourselves, and all of these structures. this is what that whole, astrologically speaking, the Pluto Saturn conjunction, it was about. It's way bigger than, well, most astrologers, really good astrologers are aware of this. It's not an aspect happening in the heavens. It's just like, oh, we're just going to make this little adjustment, and we went through a pandemic, and here we go of civilization. No, we're talking about the very foundation is changing, or
Yes.
that potential is there, right? So for those who don't embrace the potential, who think this is a bunch of new age hooey, that's fine. Stay with the old foundation, that you have that choice to see reality, to continue to see reality through 3-4D, right?
Yes.
But again, the opportunity is to take that ride with your body. I'm not talking, so many people think ascension or rising above or transcending this is losing the body. It's actually the opposite. The more in the body we are, the more we can expand. Let's see if we can value what is true and what is light and what is love, instead of falling victim to the conditioning that we are not this light, that we are not these incredibly designed beings, and that you finally take ownership of it, basically, is what I'm saying. But the taking ownership is the key, and suicide is the opposite of taking ownership. People ask me, what do you think happens if you do commit suicide? Well, I just, I can't say. What I do feel, though, is that if we did go through with it, that we're just going to go boom right back into the body. It's like, there's no, it's like, okay, sorry, I didn't quite get it that time. It's not a huge judgment and you're going to burn in hell for it and all that. It's just you waking up without the body and saying, oh, that didn't do it. Oh, damn. Okay.
Yeah.
Send me back in.
But you know what's insane? You know what's insane about this? I have to say this. When the biologically, just on a biological level, when you're dying, we have this idea that, they pull the plug and then, the body goes into hiatus and then, it's a slow decay from there and you just die and slowly rot, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those major problems, again, like back to like all these like categorization issues. We trust WebMD to give us like some very advanced biological research when it's not true. What happens when you actually pull the plug? The body does not go into hiatus. This blew my mind. So immediately, like let's say you're brain dead. What's happening when you're brain dead is they looked at brains and they realized that your neurons never stopped working. They are just now looking for new forms of embodiment in other parts of the organism in order to keep it running in some other way. So decay actually occurs so let's say, you're dead. You died like 6 months ago. Your body is not decaying in the sense like, oh, it's just falling apart. What's happening is all the parts of it are literally still trying to figure out where it's going, what it's doing, how it's unfolding. Oh, the skin is about to decay. Okay, well now the skin is traveling to a different part of the muscle because it's trying to hide. Like it's still alive. It's still trying to rearrange and reconfigure. And even when it's like a corpse, a skeleton, it's not that it failed. It's more that it was trying to disembody and re-embody in ways that didn't lead back to the same blueprint that it started from. And so it just goes into the dirt, or it goes into the air, or it becomes entropy. It goes into other things in the environment around it. And now it develops new entities onto itself.
Yeah.
It becomes now the body field becomes a field body. Now the field, the field of the body is more extended across the entirety of the room, and the field becomes the body now. But then we say, oh well, that's not us. It's like, yes, it is. If you're attempting to, like, God forbid, not to be like vulgar, but like you're trying to like slit your wrists, that is one part of your infinite body trying to disembody itself in order to reassemble itself somewhere else because it can't solve a problem in that area.
Right.
It's not decay, it's re-evolution, basically.
Yeah, it can't solve the problem through the dimensional lens that it perceives itself to be trapped within.
Yes, exactly.
Which is the paradox.
Yeah, that's the paradox. And
Yeah.
I think there's a way to solve it, which is you're never really anywhere. You're always within the trace of somewhere. And it's just sort of like you're getting these traces of things, and we learn this when we're young. We get all these traces, these vague notions, and then we slowly begin to learn to draw.
Mm-hmm.
But then we forget that we're drawing. We think that, oh my God, everything that I thought, everything that I ever felt is a structure, is some unraveling, is some sense of continuity or consistency. It's not. You're actually playing with chaos itself. You are tracing sketches that don't necessarily have anything to do with each other, and then you're trying to use those sketches to unsketch.
Yeah.
And that's why we think it's a paradox. It's like, oh, I want to get out of this area.
Yes.
Well, the thing that you call this area is just an amalgamation of different drawings that you don't realize you can unsketch, erase, and reassemble. And so it's not the dimension is limited, it's that you are mistaking perception for the dimension itself.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Yeah. I love that. Huge potential for a human being now to wake up in form, because that is the way through this. To come fully online while in form is how we were originally designed to be. It's not escaping the form to go on and become these greater beings of light, or to call ourselves, we're just light beings and we're just in these, meat sacks until we're not. That is the opposite from my experience and my direct communion with this field or presence is that the secret or the key is that we wake up to it. We die while we're in form, right? And we're reborn. We die and we're reborn into the truth of who we are, which goes back to that, whole Christianity model. And, the birth of Christ, or being the Christ light in form. Once we achieve that, once we are that again, our natural state, again, that's when we can make different choices and go, do I want to do that again? No, I'm going to go off and do this now. Or, and the myriad, the infinite ways that we could move on and explore and practice.
Just want to say this. You are, and I don't mean this lightly as like some kind of like polite gesture. You are one of the only human beings where when you speak, I actually feel like I'm getting lost in all these dimensions that even my mind is even though it's like, pretty vast, I'm still like, whoa, damn it, I can't put the little what's it called? I can't put the little point or axis there to remember, because there's so much light coming from that essential point that she just made, and usually I could keep up with people because they're just talking through the intellect.
Right.
So you could just placehold it. You could bookmark it for later, and you're like, who gives a shit? I'll figure it out through symbolism. But like you, it's like every single thing is a world, and I'm like, whoa, oh my God, I hardly get this.
I love how you said it, and I'm pretty vast.
I'm pretty dang vast. I like to think so.
As vastness goes,
as fast as goes, I at least be in the top 1,000, maybe.
Oh yeah, the measuring rod of this reality. Yeah. Oh boy.
What you were saying, we experienced that with death, where even these great gurus and sages, I really feel like they're making a mistake in some key area where, they're always asked about death because that's what most people care about, and like afterlife and stuff. And I get what the sages are saying. They're saying, there's no such thing as death, there's just rebirth or whatever. But then it's like, no. You're acting like death is not continuous, in the sense that, like, for example, I'm 23, and if you just take that as a number, that's wrong, because the idea of 23 gives you this notion of, okay, well, I'll be 24 someday, therefore time is strict, essence is strict, my thoughts are strict, they are beheld by this concrete structure called time. And there are only certain things that I could do to go against the tidal wave of that. But that's not true, because I could be 23 with an 18-year-old healthy biological brain, or I could be a 65-year-old with a healthy 23-year-old operating neurology. And so to me, what the sages miss is you could live as this human form forever if you practice or want to practice that kind of dance. But they always say, oh no, everything is dance. Yes, that's true, but that gives death a kind of a weird meaning without people realizing it. Death is not inevitable. Death is just dancing backward into something else. And it's not even really backward, it's just into something beneath or into something outward. And to me, it's like, hey, what if I want to be Nicholas for 200 years? That's possible. But people, even the sages are like, oh, why would you do that? You're just dance. Why would you want to be in this dance forever? And it's like, no, that misses the point. If everything is dance, I can dance however I like at my own pace, which means that I can actually exist in this form for as long as I like. And some kind of capital D death is a choice. It's a choice. It's not just, I'm not just sucked in and like, oh, rebirth now. No, rebirth is even a choice. Hence transhumanism, like how you mentioned eloquently before. Where transhumanism is saying, oh yeah, your neurological framework can even be suspended. You could live in this form of human plasticity if you have the technology, and your soul will just be along for the ride. Your soul probably won't like it because it's going to want to extend itself, but you could make technology subservient to the soul. Technology is usually perceived as machine, but for example, my hand is a machine, but I can do things with my hand that are non-mechanistic.
Right.
So I think technology is the same way. Technology could be mechanical, but there are some forms of techne that could actually be soul craft.
That's
And
exactly, yeah, what the dreams have been about. When I'm being invited, I get invited into these other um, uh, I want to say world, but other contexts,
yeah,
where the the beings, the physical beings, I mean, in this one particular one, they were bird people. They looked like birds, and they brought me into where they live, and I've been in a couple of these egg-shaped realities.
whoa,
And in this particular one, you held up your hand. That's exactly what they showed me, and it was kind of a joke. They were making a joke with me because they wanted to make a point. So they laid this glove, this intelligent glove. They wanted to show me how it worked. They laid it over my palm, and it started to merge and meld, and it was like okay, check, tick, 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 oh wait, and it stopped, and it just stayed laid instead of blending with my whole hand.
whoa,
It stopped and laid on top of my palm, and they were kind of laughing. It was funny to them because I'm not an archer. This uh, technology glove that blends with our biology um, figured that out. It was like that data wasn't there. It was, oh, she's not a, this is not for her.
right,
So it stayed laying on top. So this is designed to work with the archer, right?
right.
Um, so
And
that's how I understood how this technology works and how it's supposed to work.
yeah, is that not the very lesson we learn from magic?
Yeah.
Is that not
Yes.
is that
Yes.
not,
Yes. Yes.
yeah, like is that
Yeah.
not what magic is? Like it just
Well, that's
you
why I've had trouble understanding what magic is. When people talk about magic, it's like, wait, again, I'm from another planet, I'm from another reality. What is magic? What is that to you? And then people will explain. I go, oh, I get it. That's and yeah. So then I understand it on an inner level what magic is. So
yes,
it's all, my way of perceiving is based on everything that I've received in this internal way, not from outside, not from my outer world. How they showed me this works and how I've demonstrated it is, we resonate. Resonance is with the field, right? And then when we know who we are, we understand who we are, and we act from that foundation, um, then we look out into our world, and if we start to accept this and live in this way, then the synchronicities are almost instantaneous to whatever we like. I want to create this. Boom, 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 boom. There it is. People, places, and things
yeah,
that just come in because of resonance.
yes,
We're not trying to live outside of ourselves anymore in this false construct, this symbolic representation of who we are. We're owning and accepting who we are, regrounding into that, and then saying, you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to do, I'd like to do this. And then it arrives in your reality. And that is what our potentiality is now. That's what we can move into. We are almost, if we want to be, we can be without context now. We can be without time and space.
yeah,
And and some of us are catching on to this, and we're going, oh, what a fabulous opportunity this is to transcend what I thought I was living in before. And I've written a lot about this, about how you know these darker forces, if you will, whatever you want to refer to it as, that capitalize on our ignorance and our, our willingness to go along with this false foundation. They know this. They know that we're in an in-between place, that we could wake up to this.
Right.
So look at the shit show that unfolded in 2020.
Yeah.
Because na 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 na. Here's the big show, everybody. Welcome to the circus, as we were saying earlier.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I'd like some cotton candy. Yeah, I'd love a lollipop. Wait, what are they doing over there? The distraction after distraction. So you don't feel anything except anger, rage, desperation, futility, depression, suicidal ideation. All of these things are like this sticky glue that reaches into your own conditioning and agreement that you are not one with that absolute, that you are not one with that light, that you are not that light itself. And so that way in for this dark force, you leave that gap for them to insert themselves and tell you how to think and who you are. Here's the definition of you. This is what reality is. And if you question it, you'll be laughed at and you'll be called crazy. Right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there you have it.
They even define, like I know people usually understand, like, oh, they define who you can be and who you are. No. It's even more perverse. I wonder if you stumbled upon this yourself as well. They define how a self is represented to a self, in it, like how the internal monologue represents itself to itself.
Yeah.
I knew a lot of like I was talking with my guy friend, my best friend Tristan, and he was talking about, oh, I noticed this, you're very attracted to girls who seem lost. And I thought that was funny, because that could mean so many bad and so many good things at the same time. And I said, well, what do you think I do that for? Why? What do you think? What do you mean by attraction? He appreciates, like, philosophical psychopathy, but that's how he described it. He thought, oh yeah, it's sort of like you admire the despair of the lack in the other. You sort of see that there's this empty space that's trying to contend with itself amongst the world, amongst the environment. And you look at that and you're attracted to that because you're like, whoa, how could this be? How does that kind of organism exist, where there are sort of all these moving parts, but when you look deeper, the moving parts are not attached to anything. They're just moving on their own, and there's no content. And I thought, well, that's beautiful. There is some truth to that, but that's not why I'm attracted to those people. Attraction, he thought it was sexual attraction. Silly guy. but oh, silly. You think I'm sexually attracted to people? No, that's kindergarten stuff. But that was back in, the paradigm of the genital,
Yes. Yes, that paradigm. Yes.
Yeah. And I was like, no, silly. I'm to this idea of of that reality seems incomplete. That, and not because there was an error, but because reality itself is not a whole. Reality itself is an excess. There wasn't a category. There wasn't the one and then the one split into the many. No, there was the pure undifferentiated, and then the undifferentiated started making other undifferentiations, and then we called that differentiation, but it's not. And
Yeah, yeah.
and I'm curious about, oh, look at all these undifferentiated constants that seem to constantly occur and bring forth themselves. And when I looked at that kind of person, I started realizing, wait, the only reason I think that this type of girl is lost is because I have a certain configuration of how internal monologue should work and how the psyche should work. There should be an ego, a super ego, and an id, and there should be like this structure. I couldn't imagine, like, what would a person be like? Because I can imagine a person without an ego if he transcended one's ego, but I couldn't imagine an ego like a pre-egoic state. I,
Mm-hmm.
I, I always imagined a non-egoic state as a transcendent state. I didn't imagine it as, what if a person just never developed an ego? What if they were just a person without an ego?
Mm-hmm.
And that's most people. Most people do not have the level of awareness possible to create a meta representation of themselves as themselves that they can call an ego. They don't have time to do that. What if they have trauma? What if they were never taught that? What if they never had the freedom of environment to be able to develop that kind of highly complex structure that we call an ego, that most people take for advantage of, thinking that, oh, well, that's the self. Like, you can't not have a self. Well, congratulations to those lost people. You're like an aristocrat of your own thoughts. Like, how'd you do that? How'd you create that structure? And so that's why I was attracted to them. I was attracted to the fact that, oh my God, they're people too, and they're trapped within themselves, so they can't even speak for themselves. They can't even be like, help, because they don't even know they need help. They just know that they function differently. And I was like, oh my God, how terrifying that even the most moral people, like the most moral people I know, more moral than me, they would say, oh, Nick, you don't have to worry about those kinds of people. They don't fit the criteria of consciousness yet. They are still in the amoeba stage, so there's no need to even, it's not even a moral question yet, because in order for it to be a moral question, they have to be alive. You see how scary that is? They don't even see, they're like, oh no, there's such an absolute lack in their consciousness that in some sense they're not even conscious yet, so morality doesn't apply. Morality doesn't apply to atoms, so why are you applying morality to these forsaken? So yeah, it's really
Well,
scary.
there's a lot there that you just, thank you for that.
I'm
And
sorry,
that,
but
that could be another whole conversation. I was just like, I'm for the last 45 minutes, I've been going, well, we should probably try and wrap this up. And, so if we're going to share it,
yeah.
it's at least in a manageable viewing form. And then you come
And
and
then I said
land
that.
on this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, the way I feel about, well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge that that is a beautiful thing about you, is that you do notice these um, souls that are on the sidelines, and you do have this heart, this inspiration from your heart to make contact with them and to provide a mirror for them in a way that nobody else has probably been able to do for them.
Right.
So I honor you for that. I appreciate you for that, because you have shared this before in our conversations. And
Thank
I
you.
would say that I relate to that. I've always been drawn to the ones on the fringe because I feel that I am on the fringe. So I would say my attraction to the different ones is I recognize potential.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, this is more available right now. You don't have to fight with anything. It's just kind of raw, and I don't know. How does this work here? This place is weird. It's like, because I relate to that. I have
Yeah.
always felt that way. And I've always felt like a stranger in a strange land. And I have talked to hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of people who feel the same way. And these are the people that can eventually get to that suicidal space, because it's like, well, I couldn't figure it out. Sorry, God, or whatever. I'm sorry. I failed. So they feel like a failure. You are not a failure. You are closer to
Yes.
this truth than those who are emotionally and spiritually unavailable, no matter what comes out of their mouths.
Mm-hmm.
They are unavailable. These people that you're speaking about, I find more available, and it doesn't take long if you just say something that inspiration brings through. It doesn't take long for them to go, huh?
Yeah.
What? Did you really say that? Oh my God. And it becomes water to them. It becomes, and it's not because, we're saying anything profound. It's that there's something there that they can see that you see. They're seeing you, seeing them, maybe
Yes.
for the first time in their lives.
Yeah. That's
And
exactly what they say. That's exactly what they say too
yeah,
to me.
and that's food, that's water, that's nourishment for the soul. So that's why I always appreciate the ones who are here, among many other things they may be here for, who do stop and recognize these souls who just need, they just need to be seen, like, you exist.
Yeah.
You're not trapped on the other side of that wall. You do. There's some of us here who see you and want to acknowledge you. The
Yeah.
namaste thing. It's like I do see it in you.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I need to wrap it up,
Yep.
which I hate to do, but I do have to go.
My one dream now would be to just get in a room with you and just to have like an endless conversation. Like
That
I
is
would.
just, that's what I live for.
Yes.
I just live for that, and I'm thank you for saying that, because that's my dream and inspiration too. Because it's so important, that this dialogue is so important now,
It really
because
is.
this is how we demonstrate. Remember that big ship that's moving in the expansion. This is how it's demonstrated. This is how it becomes more visible in this crossover space between worlds, in this in the potential that we sit in. Before the expansion ship leaves, it's like, look what's still possible.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, bye-bye. Good luck. That's what it feels like to me. And so, even though we've had to do it over Zoom um, for all this time, I am looking forward to that. My work, especially, is about being in the physical space of other people, because there's an energy that, as you know, there's an energy that permeates the space where where people can start to understand that this is how the data enters in.
Yes.
This is, if there's room for it, which is another whole conversation about trauma and blocking. But this is in being in the physical space of one who is speaking from this new paradigm, new form, new consciousness, not new, but more expanded, then those who are in that field just can get the data without having to think so much, which is how we started off our whole conversation.
Yes.
And so they can begin to reorient in ways where they don't have to think, but they just, it's like music. It's just, you are just sitting in the music of it and being, influenced and activated and enlightened by it. Right.
That's really well put. Yeah, yeah, like that's exactly what I want, because I I am not only uh lucky enough to have this deep symbiotic relation with you, but I also have one other person as well. Like, you think, oh my God, wow, the fact that there's even one person out there. I have another person that I have this equally endless symbiotic relation with as well. And me and her have met like 3 times, because she lives in another country.
Uh-huh.
And we've met like 3 times, and it's lightning coming out of the bottle. And I really want to explore that lightning with you as well. So I just can't wait to extend, because I think I want to do this as well. If you're down for it, I want to have both our works arrive at each other, but also not be limited to each other. I just want them to touch and to see
Yeah.
where they could meet. Or in some cases, I want your work to completely envelop mine, and I'm just kind of this listening listening entity that's kind of just submerging and trying to understand all the layers. Like, I want that kind of, all these different communions of.
Yeah. And we can choose to be any one of those at any given time.
Right,
We don't have to freeze it into something. This is what I am. You're all
right,
those
yeah,
things. You have that gift of not only being able to receive and understand these states of awareness and oneness and feeling and understanding, communing, but you're able to have a dialogue with me about it, and then you're able to take it to more layers into that thinking construct that we were talking about. That's what I do not have. I don't have that. I
oh,
come alive in my talking with you because I know that it's like I come into thinking, we're dialoguing, just because we're dialoguing, we're thinking. So um and then I just go, oh, okay, so we can just stay here and we don't have to keep breaking it down further. We each have to come to the table with our gifts now, because I can't do it all. You can't do it all. All the others that are, perceive themselves to be spiritually awake or aware, who've had the experiences, the connection with the light, the communion with the light. You got to step up now. That there's no more excuses. Like, oh well, if I do, then I'll lose my revenue stream in the world. Well, go with your revenue stream then, if it has that much more power over you than the light of the absolute. I'm just encouraging people to step up now, because we are all doing this together. If we show up with our gifts, we become more visible. Again, as I was saying earlier, we become more visible in the world that we are emerging from. This space where we still have time to be heard and seen. But if we don't all, it's time. We're not on a journey to get there anymore. We're here. This is it.
Yes.
Come online, do your part, and that part will look like inspiration and joy, right?
Yeah.
It's not like this labor intensive thing.
Yeah.
It's
It's not
this
labor
is
at
your
all.
joy.
Yes. That's why, just to end what you're gonna say, this is what helps me translate, I think. Um, I do experience it as translatability when I'm using like my intellect, because I love my intellect, very fun. Um,
Yes,
but
yes. It's
it's
amazing.
yeah, it's like I always like saying like I don't. It's not necessarily like my intellect is me and I'm like patting myself on the back. It's more like I'm on the roller coaster of my intellect. And I'm like, ooh,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so that's what it is. And but in terms of the kind of translation you're talking about as well, I think it's in its most rudimentary sense, if you can tap into like the absolute intuition, it it all just becomes metamorphosis. And that's why I think I can bridge so well. It's because if you just listen to someone, you you look at yourself and you find yourself changing. It's like the words that are coming out of the other person's mouth are literally conducting themselves like lightning
Mhm.
against your organism, and then you see yourself as a new organism, and then you just speak, and then it that's the language they're speaking in. You have no control over it. It's like, oh, I didn't even have to translate. Their
It's beautiful.
words are
Beautiful.
already doing it for me. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, and I should say that what I just said about that I don't have the ability to translate, I'm speaking about language. I'm
Yes.
speaking emotionally. I can go right there if somebody is emotionally available, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's the words that I can't penetrate or figure out. Like, how do I get to their heart, their emotions through these words, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it feels like. Yeah. Oops.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Oh, what's that?
It's a brownout, but I
Oh.
have the laptop plugged into a one of those backup boxes.
Oh. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's the sign.
Yeah. It's like it's
that
getting too deep. You'll
it's
never be.
like right, exactly.
Reality itself is bending in on this singular point because we're doing so much. Like,
I know. Okay. Well, gosh, I just so appreciate and value our connection times, our communion times together, because that's really what it starts to feel like to me. It's like, yeah, all these words are happening, but on another whole level, it's just humming, right?
yeah.
It's just pure music to me. So thank you for that, Nick.
And thank you for being in my life and for still being here. I'm really happy I'm still in contact with you because literally I think my inner circle is literally 4 people. I only talk to 4 people and you're one of them. And
Oh,
I'm
I am
really
so
happy.
incredibly honored by that. Thank you so much. We're talking about what needs to be, we're exploring and communing around things that need to be bridged in order to make this real.
But now I found this certain amalgamation of persons where I'm like you and the 3 other people where I'm like, I don't feel like I have to translate. And I
Yeah.
really need that. Maybe I
Yes.
could still talk to others, but like I need an inner circle more than ever right now.
Yes.
I
Yes.
need inner being to be my inner circle. Yeah.
Yes. Wonderful. Beautiful. And that's a great way to close because you give that to me as well. And I appreciate that in you. Thank you for your beautiful heart and beautiful mind,
Thank
beautiful
you.
whole being that you are.
And you as well.
Thank you, Nick.